This is Stacy McKibben with the Master Communicator podcast, where CEOs, senior leaders, and C-suite executives share their advice. It's 6 questions in 9 minutes because the best leaders know how to share their ideas concisely and quickly. Let's jump right in. Question number 1. In a few sentences, please tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm Dr. Arlen Meyers. I'm an emeritus professor at the University of Colorado School of Medicine and the College of Business, and I'm the president and CEO of the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs.
Fantastic. I'm excited to hear what you have to say about leading people through changing times. I can imagine through the pandemic this last year, you've experienced quite a bit of change.
Yeah, it's been good. Actually, as everyone's been reading, the pandemic has accelerated change for many, many reasons.
Yeah, exactly. So question number 2 for you. What's the best thing about leading people through change from your perspective?
Getting ideas to patients, which is sorely needed because for many, many reasons, there are problems with exactly doing that.
So getting ideas to patients, meaning kind of modernizing medicine and being able to improve patient care?
Right. So the ideas have to do with drugs, devices, diagnostics, digital health, care delivery, fintech, you name it. The problem is that the U.S. healthcare system is the sick care system that we have is masquerading as a healthcare system, and we're trying to transform one to the other.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear that. That's absolutely been one of the things that I have felt for many, many years is that they're incentivized to keep me sick, not necessarily to get me better.
Well, they're not exactly to keep you sick. We're incentivized to treat you when you're sick.
Right.
But that's what we're trying to change, right? It's not like we're trying to make you sick.
Sure. But again, it's in their best interest if I stay sick because then there's more to treat.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. Exactly.
So then as you think about that, what piece of advice would you give to other leaders about implementing change?
The advice I would give is that inspiration eats motivation for lunch. And by that, I mean that, leadership is about vision, direction, and inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in healthcare or any other business, it's really about the why, not so much about the how and the what.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, you always hear folks talk about start with why. And, from your perspective, you're seeing that as a real catalyst for being able to implement meaningful change.
Well, it's easy to do in healthcare because it's a pretty mission-driven industry and profession.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people get stuck in industries where their job or their industry, after a while, in their opinion, starts to look meaningless. It's pretty hard not to satisfy that meaning box when you're in sick care.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. Well, then, okay, so that leads me nicely to my next question, which is I've been hearing from other leaders that keeping teams engaged remotely has been a challenge. And I'm curious, have you guys even had to deal with some of the remote elements, in your particular industry? And if so, what's been your experience and how have you guys been handling something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. You've been reading about telemedicine, virtual health, all the transitions during COVID. So that's an important element from a business or from a society perspective. Actually, COVID has accelerated interest in the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs for many reasons. But I think that, if you look at various theories of motivation or Daniel Pink's book, Drive, what drives people to do things? His notion is, and I pretty much agree with this, is mastery, autonomy, and purpose. So my advice is let people do what they're really good at, get out of the way, and make sure they understand why they're doing it.
I love that. So then as you think about that, what daily practice is most important to you as a leader?
I call them the 3 L's, learn, listen, and leave. So that means as someone who has an organization or you're leading an organization, what I found is my blind spots have to do with simply not listening, thinking you're the smartest person in the room, et cetera, et cetera. So number 1 is learning. And if you really want to learn, you teach. So my good fortune is that I'm a professional medical educator. So I've been able to benefit from teaching because then you learn twice.
Mm-hmm.
The second is you listen instead of talk. And That's another blind spot I have. I tend to fill up the room and suck out all the oxygen and want to be heard instead of just listening to people and understanding where they're coming from. And the third is leave. I mean, I think the purpose of a leader is to make themselves as obsolete as soon as possible. So what you're trying to do is leave a business that is sustainable when you die. And guess what? You will. And best case, try to leave a legacy.
That could be your fourth L.
Exactly. Well, it's part of the leave. So I think
it is actually.
Depends on whether you're a lumper or a splitter. Right.
I love that. Seems like we could unpack some of these things. It seems like you've got some really life lessons here for us to learn, Arlen.
Right. I call it the 2-minute life.
Well, then it's perfect for our 9-minute show.
Yeah, perfect. Exactly. Right.
That's great. So as you think about, who influences you and where you get your learning, as you say, what other successful business leaders like yourself should be on the podcast? In other words, who else should we be paying attention to and listening to? Who should we be influenced by?
Right. My answer is physician entrepreneurs with clinical business judgment. And so what I mean by that is that in medicine, probably the most undervalued but most appreciated inside is clinical judgment. And you get clinical judgment by having experience, which means you've made mistakes, which means you've learned from those mistakes. So it's the same sort of thing in business. Like if you're a doctor and all you do is study anatomy and physiology and never go to the bedside, you're not a doctor. And just like being an entrepreneur, if all you do is get an MBA and study it, about entrepreneurship instead of going to the boardroom to actually practice it, you're really not an entrepreneur. And if you are a doctor, you're going to make mistakes. Otherwise, you're not seeing enough patients, or in my case as a surgeon, you're not doing enough operations. If you don't learn from those mistakes, that's how you develop clinical judgment. It's the same thing in business. You need to develop business or entrepreneurial judgment. So when you combine the two, that's what I mean by clinical business judgment. So you should be talking to people who've been there, done that, made the mistakes, learned the lessons, and can pass them on.
Wow, that's amazing. So how do you discern those people, or how would you find them?
You ask me, and I can tell you who to talk to.
Well, that's perfect.
I'm happy to give you a bunch of referrals. There are lots of folks out there doing this, and that's part of the reason we created the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs, to showcase and highlight what's going on.
Well, I've always found it fascinating that in all the years of education that a doctor goes through, that they get, maybe 5 to 10 hours of nutrition training and maybe, 5 to 10 hours of communication and business training, right? But you think about it through the lens that you're talking about, and that's what they're going to need and use every single day. Yet, where's the opportunity to practice those things?
Right. And that's something that we're fixing. And we can go into a long conversation about how we're thinking medical education, particularly when it comes to teaching the business of medicine, and particularly innovation and entrepreneurship. It's cruel and unusual punishment to pay doctors in the future for value and not teach them how to create it.
I love that. Oh, I'm so excited for you guys. It sounds like you're really, making some meaningful change, and I look forward to hearing about you guys in the news, making all kinds of waves out there.
Thanks.
So, Arlen, it was great to have you on the show. If somebody wanted to reach out and introduce themselves, how might they go about finding you?
I'm pretty much all over social media. So the best way to do it is just go to my LinkedIn profile, or the SOAP website is www.soapnet.org, or arlen.meyers@ucdenver.edu.
That's perfect. Well, my audience knows I'll have the link right below here so they can go and click on it and find you if they want to. But hopefully you'll join us for a future episode as well, and come back and see us again, because it was a pure delight to have you here today.
I hope so. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Well, this is Stacy McKibben with the Master Communicator podcast. For more ideas and insights, please do go check us out at www.concilioteam.com. And we look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care.